This nickel was in my wallet this morning as I came through security. Caused me a lot of problems. As pulled me over to the side and ran their wand over me, and I had to show them my ankles. Anyway, who is this fellow's face on here? There's some life out there? I thought there was some life out there. Jefferson. Isn't he the fellow that said and wrote, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected us with another, and to assume among powers the separate and equal station which the laws of nature's God entitled us a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that we should declare the causes which impel us to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, which among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Isn't he the one that wrote that? What is this building on here? Monticello. This building, it was Jefferson's pride and joy. It's on the back of the nickel because he built it. Actually, the grounds were maintained by slaves. The foundation was built by slaves. The building was built by slaves. So, I'm having a problem here. Help me out with this. You mean this guy who wrote that our Creator has endowed us with certain inalienable rights, which among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He used slaves? Now, help me out here. How is it possible that this man wrote the Declaration of Independence? The thing is he really didn't. The Declaration of Independence that Jefferson wrote was actually a compilation, a plagiarization, if you want to put it that way, of 4 documents. The Scottish Arbroath Declaration of April 6th, 1320, the National Covenant of Scotland, which they produced in 1638 to 39, and James Otis wrote a tract which was published by the town of Boston in 1774, and then there was a set of documents put together by Congress which was concerned their rights and the violation of those rights in the Journal of Congress in 1774. I'm going to try something totally different today in speaking with you, something I've never done before. And whoa, it's like throwing the dice, for me. I don't have a prepared speech for you. And the reason why is because I wanted to speak from my heart to your heart. And from the bottom of my heart, it's a great joy and a great privilege to be here speaking to you. Now, I'm not an eloquent speaker. I can't compete with the likes of Bill Clinton, who's got great speech writers and does a great job at presenting speeches. And I can't compete with the mass media. So my talk with you tonight is going to have to stand on 2 pillars. One pillar is it's intrinsically truth, what I'm going to tell you. The truth of what I'm going to tell you. That's going to be the power behind what I'm telling you. And the other thing is, if I can pull it off, is to touch your heart. Why is it important to touch people's hearts? Well, for those of you who have seen that recent movie, The Titanic, that will give me an illustration to illustrate. Now, we could turn on cable television the History Channel, and they'll give you some statistic. For instance, in 1943, the Nazi U-boats sunk so many ships, and that goes into our head. That's head knowledge. But what they did with the movie Titanic is they let your heart go out to this young man and this young woman, so that when this Titanic ship sank, that instead of it being head knowledge, it was heart knowledge. And that's what I need to do tonight, is to be able to touch your heart. Because if leaders that are opposed, that are in resistance to the New World Order and in resistance to the elite that I'm going to be exposing tonight, if we don't reach the hearts of the people, we're going to miss our last opportunities of what's going on, and not to the mind only, but to the heart. And see, I'm a very analytical person. While my peers were out partying and having sex and whatever, I was studiously studying history documents. And, of course, I try to cover that up. But it's very easy for me to communicate facts. I can spout off facts to you, and I'm not saying this in a bragging way, but, I could say, Cabot sailed in 1497, Vasco da Gama, 1497, and Vespucci, 1499. Or I could talk to you analytically, like here in Atlanta, this city made a big contribution when the Union troops captured this city in September 1st, 1864, because that Lincoln got a military victory. He won the election that year. If he had lost, the other candidate, McClellan, would have made peace with the South. So, that's analysis. I can give you facts and analysis. I don't want to do that to start with. What I want to do is touch your hearts. I had a friend back in 1984. He came to me and said, "Fritz, I know you're a researcher. I have to go before my church and talk about relief efforts in Somalia. Will you read so I can go before the church?" I said, "Fine, I'll do that." I had some head knowledge about the situation already, but I wanted to know the nitty-gritty of the situation. I wanted to know which relief efforts were legitimate. So here I go. I'm studying. And I'm reading one anecdote after another of suffering of people in Somalia. The tragedy of this family, the tragedy of this mother. And at a certain point, it broke that wall between my mind and my heart, and it touched my heart, and I cried for a whole day. So I go to my friend Dwight. I say, "Here's my research. It really touched me. I cried for a whole day." So he takes it before his church. I'm sitting in the pew watching. How's this going to go? Gave his talk, got translated back into head knowledge again. I sat there and watched. For instance, one guy in the audience was saying, "Well, they're not going to help them commies." Well, it had nothing to do with communism. We're talking about people that have suffered and suffered and suffered for years. They could care less about America. They could care less about Russia or thisism or thatism. We're talking about starving people, So it had gotten lost. The message had gotten lost. Cisco watched a show that was about the making of the movie Amistad, which I haven't had a chance to watch yet. I want to. And she said that one of the major actors in it said that it wasn't until he put the collar and the leg irons on himself, in the process of, they've got to be realistic, I guess, in the acting, that it really hit him as to what the tragedy of slavery, the brutality, the whole, it hadn't touched him, and he cried. And there was still enough of what it had touched his heart in him, so that when he was interviewed on television, it made Cisco cry. I didn't get to see the show, but that's what I'm talking about. For people to understand the depth of what's going on. Well, I had this had this one incident. It's a guess who's coming to dinner type thing. I had an Afro-American girlfriend, and she was interested in marrying me. So she wanted to show me to Mom. She takes me to show me off to her family, and she brings me into the house, and her mother has one of these look what the cat drug in looks, and she says, "Honey, there ain't no future in a white boy." You know, right there, I never forget that. You know, and she's right. There's no future in a white boy. There's no future for any of us people. We are faced with some really heavy-duty things coming down the pike. There's no future for a white boy. There's no future for anybody. You know, they got us collectively at the edge of a cliff, and people say, "Well, Fritz, aren't you afraid if you expose these people, they're going to hurt you?" And I'm saying, look, they got us at the edge of a cliff. They're ready to push us off the cliff, and you're worried that if I struggle a little bit, they're going to get upset? Now, there's one of the things using Amistad. I can maybe use Amistad as a way to kick off, and I'm trying to develop this so I'm not not jumping around too much on you. But the slave trade. Let's look at that for a moment and see how I can bring you into the topic by using that. You know, because we oftentimes think, well, international corporations, that's something modern. You know? No. You had your aristocratic families. Let's go back to in the 1600s, and you've got rich aristocratic families. Amsterdam has become an international banking center. You've got these Jewish banking families there. You've got these families that came from Venice that have moved up into Amsterdam and made it into a banking center. And they formed trading companies. And the royalty of Europe would grant monopolies to these trading companies. The Dutch West Indies Trading Company, what was it formed for? The Dutch West Indies Trading Company, responsible for New York. When they created it, it was called New Amsterdam, right? And it became a big trading center. Of course, Amsterdam was a big trading center, so it's no surprise that New Amsterdam became a trading center too. The company was formed with primarily one sole purpose. That was slave trade. But that is an example of what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with international corporations. And behind those international corporations are these elite movers and shakers that keep themselves hidden. They're the ones that have controlling stock in the company, or work through proxies that have the controlling stock, and you never see them. But they dictate the policy. So you go in and you want to read about the slave trade, you're not going to hear about these families. In fact, I haven't even begun to research. I need to go back into the original documents of the Dutch West Indies Company. I need to find out, if I can, who are the stockholders. This is the type of stuff I need to do. Because the historians, they don't do that for us. They're willing to tell us some ship captain's name, who all he's doing is he's the hired man. He's like the cab driver, you know. But who's financing him? These are the type of people I want to expose. Who's making the big bucks off of it, you know? Who's really... But when I read Leo Tolstoy's book, War and Peace, years ago, he had an interesting concept in the book, and that was, the book War and Peace is a historical fiction. It's about Napoleon invading Russia. And one of the ideas that Leo Tolstoy puts across in the book is that Napoleon didn't invade Russia. That actually what happened is that all of these individual soldiers, these Russian soldiers, made that decision to invade Russia. Well, I agree with them and I disagree with them. If we look at a thunderstorm coming in, and you know, California's getting their share of that. They can be pretty heavy duty. Those thunderstorms are made up of individual tiny drops of water. It's like an army is made up of individual soldiers. So there is an aspect of that tiny drop making up something big. Okay, and that's why I'm speaking to you, because I'm a nobody, and probably the rest of you are average citizens. And together, you know, we can make something. As an individual, I'm just a person out here. If there isn't somebody to read my books, you know, I could write all day and it's not going to do anything. It's like being in the middle of the forest shouting, you know. Nobody's going to hear you. So we all need each other. So there's that aspect of it. But I disagree with Tolstoy in that leadership plays a crucial role. Why is that? It's like a group mind, you know. I don't know why when you get a group of people together, they become like little kids, you know. It's like people want somebody to take responsibility and tell them, you know, what to do. There is so much pressure on people who are just common citizens to buckle under and go with the flow. And the way leadership goes makes the difference. Look at a coach. You know, how much change a coach can bring. You have a losing team one year and you bring in a good coach and you have a winning team the next year. Leadership does make a difference. And that's why I've got to touch the hearts of people. Is because I got to try to raise up some leaders from this group of people that I'm talking with so that we'll have people that will have the leadership courage of people like Martin Luther King Jr. will stand up for what's true. And what's going to happen when you stand up for what's true? Same thing that's happened to me. I mean, they've done about everything except shoot me, you know, and maybe they figured they don't need to do that by this point. People are going to want to take the easy way out, and that's why evil prevails. It takes courage. If you go to, you know, success speaks for itself. Look at Japan. They were bombed at the end of World War II into a bunch of ashes. And in a number of years, they have taken a country that was totally decimated, become the second greatest economic power in the world. Now, what did they do? Well, if you look at Shintoism, they teach several virtues. They teach humility, the virtue of humility. They teach the virtue of courage. And they teach the virtue of hard work. Now, every different ethnic group or national group or church or any group has a particular set of virtues that's going to stand out in it. Take Afro-Americans. What was one of the virtues that stood out? If you go back in history and you can see the accounts of the people that were the slave traders and captains and whatnot, the gentleness. The gentleness of the black people. You know? So everybody can look and go back and see what intrinsic virtues do I have? Build on your strengths, okay? Build on your strengths. And it says in the Word of God, it says that God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. Okay? Our problems are so immense that, hey, we need some help from God. Okay, so it behooves us to figure out, how can I be humble so that God's not resisting me and He's going to give me grace? Grace happens to be the strength that God gives. That's what the meaning of grace gives. But pride. I mean, what does pride do? I mean, I understand there's different meanings to the word pride. When I say pride, I'm not saying don't look to your past, because I'm telling you, you need to look to your past. If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you are. If you don't know where you are, you can't know where you're going. And this is important. You may be saying, well, what's this got to do with the Illuminati? Everything to do with the Illuminati, because they know this. See, that's why when they brought the blacks over from Africa, they cut them off from their heritage. If you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you are or where you're going. They got to strip you of your identity. When they did the mind control on Cisco, what do you think one of the biggest components of that mind control was to strip her of her identity as a person. They fractured her mind. Later on, I will, if we get to it, I've got some overheads that I can show you. And you'll see an overhead, which is a picture of a cat woman. Parts of her mind were dehumanized and made to think that they were cats. Okay? The stripping you of your identity. People don't realize that what happened to the Afro-Americans when they were brought to this country, there are a whole series of things that happened. They didn't happen by accident, because these people that are in control know exactly how to jerk other people around to manipulate them to control. This has been going on for centuries. In fact, I hate to say this, I mean, with all due respect to the suffering of the black people, but these elite families for centuries, even before slavery started, they were carrying out mind control on their own children. That is far worse than anything you can imagine. In fact, at times when I've been working with Cisco, I brought Cisco out of the Illuminati, trying to help her with her issues, her therapeutic issues. At times when we bumped into memories, and I've seen some of the horrible things that her own father did to her. This is the way the Illuminati is. You think that they're mean to blacks? They're mean to they're 10 times worse than their own kids, you know. And there were times I didn't even know I could do this. There were times when I would find out something that had happened to her that was just mind-blowing. It's like my whole being melted. At one time, like the Wicked Witch, I literally melted. I just, like this, melted and sobbed on the floor, cried, just totally wasted. There's 3 books that we have co-authored on the mind control, and you can get some more information on that. And I just briefly touch on that, but that's not really the thrust of my talk tonight. I was asked to talk on the elite movers and shakers. I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to try to give you an idea how they think. They don't think like you and I. They love double binds, for one thing. A lot of our lives are double-binded. Have you ever noticed that no matter which way you go in life, it seems like there aren't any right answers? Why is that happening? These people, you may not realize it, or maybe you realize it. They have figured this stuff out to a T. I've seen some of their formulas. I mean, it looks like this country is just leaderless, and it's just the economy's going this way and that way. It's happening very fine-tuned, planned. Very detailed plans, very detailed formulas fact, maybe I should hit you with this one anecdote. Give you a little bit of idea of what we're dealing with these elite families and how much they care about us. But I'm going to preface this by saying I don't talk to people to frighten them. The spirit of fear doesn't come from the Lord. Remember that virtue of courage? Remember Martin Luther King Jr. standing up there with courage because he knew what he was doing was right? That's what I want you to have. I don't want you to be paralyzed. This isn't an effort at paralyzing my audience. No, because there's a lot of positives. But first we have to come out of denial of what the problem is so that then we can work with what reality is. It's hard to come out of denial. It'd be nice to stay in our nice, easy comfort zones where we have this make-believe world that everything's hunky-dory, but and maybe if we go to enough ball games and fill our lives with other things, we can ignore reality. But for this time, while you're in here, I got you as an audience. I'm going to give you a dose of reality. Okay. I have a friend. His name's Dale. And in 1978, if you'll think back, those of you that were adults back then, you remember that we were going through an energy crisis. It looked like the economy was going to collapse. A lot of people began getting concerned about. That's when a lot of people found out that there's all these movers and shakers that are controlling everything. Was back at that time period. So he's getting really concerned about what's going on, and he just wants to get out of this world. Wouldn't that be nice? Go somewhere where you could get away from it all. Well, that was his idea. So he sold his company. He gets a semi-truck. He loads it up with food, supplies, enough to last him his whole life. Yeah. And he studies all these maps, and Dale finds the perfect place that's remote. It's way out in the Tules, the boondocks of Alaska. Nobody will ever be out there. I mean, he'll be out by himself, and he can live the rest of his life away from this civilization that's going to collapse on itself. He drives up there. This remote place that he's going to build his cabin is so remote he has to carry his supplies in there. So he's planning over a period of years to drag his supplies into it. He goes out there. He's looking for the exact place that he had decided to put this cabin, and he runs into this enormous building out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we're not talking about roads or anything. It's just an enormous building. And as he walks up to it, out comes this engineer that's in charge of building it. And this guy is rather proud of what he's done. And he just takes Dale's surprise visit right in stride and says, well, come on in. And he's telling Dale a little bit about it, and Dale's full of questions. And so they walk into this place, and we've got aisles, long aisles, like 200 yards, with the largest computers you could imagine on both sides. There's aisles after aisles in this huge place. Dale said that there was approximately like 30 people that were busy running the computers. And the guy takes him in to the heart of the whole complex, into this room. And Dale didn't know that the name of this computer it's called a beast computer. There's 9 beast computers. But the guy comes right up in front of the computer, and he said, oh, by the way, he told Dale, everything I'm showing you, it's okay if I show it to you because it's all outdated. Technology is advancing so rapidly that we can't keep up with what they're coming up with. So all this hardware's, outdated. And so it's okay if you see it. Anyway, this is 1978. He could talk directly to the computer. He'll understand some about the world, but this is like too far out to believe, even if the guy's seems to be a credible guy. So the guy says, we know everything about everybody. And Dale goes, yeah, sure. Yeah. He says, well, watch. So Dale gave a name of somebody he knew that was pretty obscure that nobody knew about, basically. It was a friend that, just an obscure person. The guy said the name to the computer and said, what do you know about that? The computer knew everything about the guy. And the guy saying, we can control the world from this spot here. We can make any person do whatever we want. And Dale just can't believe him. It just, it doesn't sound credible. So the guy says, watch, I'll show you. So he says, I can make your friend kill his brother. No. So he asks the computer how it could be done. The computer spews out a plan. Because the computer knows his thoughts, all of his likes and dislikes, exactly everything that you've ever done that went onto a computer has been secretly dragged into the beast computers, unfortunately. And there's other ways that they can monitor you. So this beast computer knows. He knows what the beast computer did is it knew that this guy loved his daughter. So they would just continue setting up scenarios where the daughter would be injured, and finally his brother would be put into a scenario where it's the straw breaking the camel's back. The daughter is hurt, and the guy reacts. And Dale's just looking at this plan, and he's going, my goodness, if I was that guy, I would kill my brother. And the guy says, we can cause any war that we want. He said, watch this. And he names a country and asks the computer what it knows about that country and asks about a neighboring country and says, how can we get a war going between the two? But the whole point of why I'm going through this, or the major point, besides some of the other things that you're learning off of it, is that this engineer that day said to Dale, the men that run this world that I work for, they could care less about killing thousands of people in a war as they would about stepping on an ant. That's how much you mean to these people. They could kill thousands of you, and it wouldn't bother them any more than stepping on an ant. And sad to say, but a lot of us have put our trust in these people. When are we going to quit fighting their wars that they keep creating for us? You know what? It hurts my heart to see, like, Desert Storm. If I'm going to touch your heart, what about all of those young men that trusted their government, and they came back with Gulf War syndrome, and they got a little baby that doesn't have arms or legs? The horror of this. And the trust that they placed in their government. And yet, the whole time that whole situation was going, I was like fit to be tied. Because George Bush has a joint Swiss bank account with Saddam Hussein and paid him off to do it, And George Bush is out of one of these families I'm talking about. Or you think Saddam Hussein's still in power? They need the bad guy. Come on, people. Go back and let's look at World War II. There were men in this country, millions of them, that went and gave everything that they had to fight that evil of Nazism. They believed in what they were doing. While they were over there fighting Nazism, Nazism was created by the Illuminati. The Illuminati was back in this country and in the other country doing whatever they wanted. Let me give you an example. In the Volume 1 book back there, I went and I got out of the Federal Code on December 13th, and I don't know if they picked the 13th because it was a cult number or what, but on December 13th, 1941, a few days after Pearl Harbor was bombed, Roosevelt signed a presidential decree into law, is the Trading with the Enemy Act. If Secretary of Treasury Morgenthau would give certain people authorization, they were allowed to trade with the enemy. There is a monopoly on diamonds, people. De Beers has it. De Beers connects in with the Rothschilds, Illuminati bloodline, right? Illuminati have a monopoly on diamonds. Actually, the people that should have gotten the benefit of the diamonds haven't. It's these Illuminati kingpins that have gained. And their diamonds shouldn't be as expensive as they are. That's a scam too, because they're purposely got a monopoly so that they can make us think the diamonds are rare. But there is so much industrial use of diamonds that when the United States went to war in 1941, they realized that we had an immediate need for 6.5 million carats of diamonds. But we would have to go to Illuminati to get it. We'd have to go to De Beers. The U.S. government requested 6.5 million carats of diamonds from De Beers, which is located in London. And they turned down the United States. So the United States said, well, fine, if the British government and you don't give us some diamonds, we're not going to give you airplanes, and Britain can fall to Germany. That's what it is. People don't realize the behind-the-scenes finagling. The United States had to threaten Britain with not supplying them with war weapons to get the diamonds, because De Beers, is like that. So what were the Rothschilds and the De Beers doing in World War II? Well, Hitler had the same need for diamonds as we. Diamonds are used in gyroscopes for the submarines, for the airplanes, and for their V-2 missiles. Who supplied the diamonds for Hitler? The millions of carats. It's a diamond monopoly. It's real easy to figure out, people. There is no, you don't have to be a sleuth or a Columbo. They sent the diamonds to the Nazi Germans through Belgium, Congo. The United States government tried to stop them. These Illuminati kingpins have so much power, they not only ignored the U.S. government, but they're able to cover their tracks and suppress anybody from even leaking the story. Rockefeller, his big thing in helping the Nazi Germans was shipping oil to Spain, the oil and gas, and then from Spain, which was neutral, but it was pro-Nazi, Franco controlled Spain, they would send it from Spain on into the Nazi Germans. Did our government know that Rockefellers were sending oil? Yes, they did. The German war machine would have come to a stop in 1942 if the Rockefellers hadn't been supplying oil. That was where a large percentage of the oil was coming, was from the Rockefellers. Onassis, another one of the Illuminati kingpins I expose in the volume 1 book. There were approximately 480, don't quote me on the number, something like 480 Greek merchant ships when the war began. Now, there's different figures on how many of those Greek ships were. Some say all the Greek merchant ships were sunk. Onassis says, I think, 450 of the Greek merchant ships. You have to understand that Greece in the Mediterranean, you had all kinds of heavy fighting going on in the Mediterranean. Anything that was sailing was fair game for everybody. I mean, there were all kinds of activity going on. You had Germans and Italians and British and Americans. In the Mediterranean is very clear waters, and there were a lot of shipping sunk during World War II. And I don't remember the figure offhand on how many ships Onassis had, but he had, I'm sure, over 100 merchant ships. The entire Greek merchant fleet, essentially, from one side or the other, was sunk during the war. But Onassis did not lose a single ship. That took collaboration at the highest levels of the Axis and the Allies. His ships sailed everywhere. And nobody ever attacked them. They were not attacked one time. Not one time. These people sit above the wars. They make the wars for us. We go and fight these wars believing in them, and they make profit off of us. The DuPonts, another family I expose in there. The DuPonts have had almost a virtual monopoly on making gunpowder. Every war that happens, they make millions and millions of dollars off of the gunpowder and all the other armaments. I mean, I would imagine if I was a DuPont, I wouldn't want peace to last too long. I mean, war is pretty lucrative. What do these cruise missiles cost? You know, I mean, you know, think of this stuff. And getting back to Thomas Jefferson, you know, Thomas Jefferson was Illuminati. I'm sorry to tell you that. But if you look at what he did, he set up John Jacob Astor the first to make big bucks in the War of 1812. All these other American shippers and merchantmen and companies are going broke because they can't sail. And Jefferson's giving, you know, behind the table all these good deals to John Jacob Astor the first. Why? Because they were both in the Illuminati. That's why. It's the only reason that even makes sense if you look at it. Yeah, so these people, they divide, they power broke, you know. And just for the record, if you're wanting to know one of the most primary companies which they use, it's a holding company. It's Societe Generale du Belgique. That's of Belgium. Means of Belgium. It's a Belgian company. It's tied in with the House of Orange and the Rothschilds, British monarchy to some degree, but especially Rothschilds and the House of Orange and some of the other. Going back, you know, remember I said the Dutch West Indies Company. What was it formed for? One purpose. If we really want to understand the history of this country, we're going to have to go back in and look at these international corporations better. Because the colonies that were set up were proprietary. Okay, we read in the history books, they say Britain did this, France did this. No, they didn't. That international company that was headquartered in France, or this international company that was headquartered in Britain, did something. The Dutch West Indies Company did something. The Dutch East Indies Company did something. And they worked off of royal charters. But it was just like today, the international corporations are doing a lot. I mean, there aren't international boundaries anymore. The international corporations cross boundaries. I mean, people say, well, we're going to get a new world order. We already got it. You know, international, the people that make the real decisions in the world, like your international corporations, you know, they've been doing it for a long time. Like Rothschild said, I don't care who makes the laws of the country if I control the finances. Think about it. So they've developed a number of tricks over the years. One of their tricks of the trade, and you guys are going to have to help me out because I don't know how long I have to talk, and I will shift gears to something else when it's time. I'm one of these people that can talk for months. So if you give me all the rope, I'll take all the rope you'll give me. But when you're wanting me to shift gears, what I wanted to do is I wanted to spend at least 20 to 30 minutes on overheads, and I wanted to give you at least 30 minutes to ask questions. Say that's an hour. So whenever someone wants me to start that final hour, tell me. Otherwise, I just keep getting into it. Okay. Now think about, I got to go into the mind control a little bit, because one thing in understanding the Illuminati, you have to understand the bloodlines, and you have to understand the control that they exercise over their own people. If you don't understand that, a lot of what happens doesn't make too much sense. One thing is we have these elite bloodlines that think that they're divine. These people are men gods, you know? And for us, they talk about us in their writings as cattle. You know? Isn't that nice? Of course, probably some of you have experienced being treated that way too, you know. So it's probably an apt description on their part. They think that they're divine. That's what illuminated means, is to receive that divinity, that illumination. Their pride blinds them to a lot of realities. And, you know, when you get in and look at some of the characters that are in these bloodlines, they may have a lot of wealth, but their hearts, you know, are as hard as stone. You know, these people are basically soulless. In fact, I'm even beginning, some of the evidence indicates we're even getting beyond some of these people even being humans. What am I getting at? Well, that's a whole nother subject, but I'll show you some pictures that on my overheads that it looks like whatever these things are, aliens, demons, but the Illuminati certainly collaborate very closely with them, and we're even getting hybrids. But anyway, that's another subject, but it's one to consider. Some of these people may not even be human. They may be part human. If they could care less about the human race. You know, we're talking about these elite families. If you look at what they've laid out that they want to do, it's genocide. It's pure genocide. I mean, I even have a friend that's close to me that got a little bit of those genocidal policies. She wanted her trees sprayed. Pretty simple thing. She calls a company to get her trees sprayed. They come in and spray it with Agent Orange and other stuff that's supposed to be outlawed. Her dog gets cancer, her daughter gets cancer. You know, they're probably going to die. So she thinks, well, okay, we got the police, we got the EPA, we got all these people that are going to protect us. Nobody wants to listen to her. They laugh at her and they tell her she's crazy. She gets the medical evidence. They still laugh at her and tell her she's crazy. They cover it up. Why? Why is a company going out there and what they sprayed on our trees doesn't even do anything to kill the bugs? Why are they doing it? Why don't they spray, you know, it would have been simpler just to have sprayed something to kill the bugs. Why are they doing this? Policy of genocide. Reduce the world's population. This is what we're up against. This is why I want to touch your hearts. This is why I want to make some leaders out there that will stand up. Because all it takes for evil to prevail, as you've heard before, is for good men to do nothing. So, getting back to a little bit on the mind control. If you're a soldier in Vietnam, and I'm going to say this is a timeline, and at a particular point in time, your buddy that's very close to you gets blown to smithereens by an artillery round. Whatever you want to imagine hit him, he's gone. And that point in time in your memory is so traumatic that the brain has a natural defense mechanism to protect itself. It builds amnesia walls around that. Okay? The Illuminati know, and they learned this centuries ago, that if they traumatize a little child's mind, they could splinter it. The child's mind would make all these amnesia walls to protect itself. So they splintered the child's mind many thousands of times, and then they know how to go in and find those parts of the mind and program them. They create programmed multiple personalities. Multiple personality. Okay? This is why when you're looking at people, they will create the best personality possible to hold that body day in, day out. The really evil personalities are in the back of the mind. They only come out at certain times. So this is why you can have somebody who's so double-minded. Then you also have to understand the Illuminati's belief system. They are Gnostics. They believe that you must balance your good deeds with your bad deeds. So you see, the greatest philanthropists out there, a lot of these great philanthropists are Illuminati kingpins. They're earning their way to their godhood. They give a lot of money and they sacrifice a lot of people in blood sacrifices, you know. I mean, their good deeds balance their bad. Of course, their good deeds are generally self-serving. But we're talking about people, when I talk to you about the movers and shakers, these elite Illuminati bloodlines, they are so far different in their thinking than you and I. There is no comparison. We're not talking about people that think like you and I. So you might as well chuck everything you thought you knew about human behavior and how to judge people, might as well flush it down the toilet. We're talking about something totally different. And the people that are ruling the world, these elite people, they're all insane. I'm just telling you the truth. We've got insane robots programming through mind control, sophisticated mind control, more insane robots. The control of this world entirely out of the hands of sane people like you and I. So don't expect that things are going to get better overnight on their own. But we're going to have to do what we can. And there are a lot of different ways to battle evil. Evil occurs on a lot of different levels. Okay? It's like, why did those slaves get brought over from Africa? Well, you got the evil of people who are, for whoever they are and for whatever their reason, they're trying to make a buck off of selling somebody else into slavery. Then you get the evil of somebody who's making money off of transporting people. And then you've got the evil of these international corporations like the Dutch West Indies Company that are financing the whole thing and making big bucks. And then you got the evil of the person when they arrive who auctions them off, and then the person who buys it. We've got group evil. It's not one person. You see, that's the thing that people are afraid to admit, is that evil might collaborate. But it does. It does collaborate, unfortunately, in a big way. And when you've got multi-billionaires that are at the head of this thing, well, you've got collaboration on a big scale. They can pull a lot of strings. They grease the skids so that things... How many women, or I should say teenage girls, are going to be paid for keeping their virtue? I can't think of anybody who pays a girl for keeping her virtue. You know, you get paid if you go the other way. What if you're an assassin? You get big bucks for shooting somebody. Is anybody going to pay you big bucks for not shooting someone? The skids are always greased, you know, so that you go the wrong direction. That's why it takes people that don't want the easy way. If you want answers, the first answer is not to be able to accept some pain in your life. People that always want the easy way out of life, first time pain comes their way, hey, they book out of there, you know. Hey, I'm not going to put up with this. So the first thing is a battle in ourselves. We gotta start the battle right here and say, you know, I'm going to have some discipline. I'm going to endure some pain because, you know, I am going to be something more than just cattle. These people think I'm cattle, but I'm not. I'm a man with dignity, and I am going to stand up, and I am going to do what's right because it's right. And we just plant our feet and we stand our ground. And you may say, well, what's right? One of the biggest abuses that the Illuminati have been able to perpetrate on us is organized religion. You don't think that you go back in and look at the grants. See, the Illuminati, they're really smart, you know, in some ways. Of course, when you run the government, you can make things go your way, but they set the system up so if you're multimillionaire, you can put your money into a tax-free foundation. So the government can't get a hold of it. Then you can set yourself up as the person that controls how that money's spent, and then you, as the head of that foundation, you give bribes to people. That's called, you know, grants. You give bribes to everybody. Look at who the Rockefeller foundations give money to. Man, all the denominations got their hands out, you know. Big bucks. $500,000 to this denomination, $500,000 to that church. Think they're going to bite the hand that feeds them? You think if your seminary is being run by Rockefeller money, you're going to preach something that's going to offend them? Think about it, people. I know you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. You wonder why it's so hard to get things turned around, you know. Well, behind the scenes, you got a superstructure there. You know, on the front, it looks, well, you know, just like everything just seems to be happening. Well, there's a real strong superstructure there. And one of the ways of keeping society in place is religion, because you think you're doing it for God. Boy, in the mind control, in the Illuminati, you know what they do with their kids when they're 2 years old? It's going to blow you away. Remember I told you they create multiple personalities? They want their children, all at about age 18 months, 2 years, they want their children to give their lives to Christ. Yeah, every victim, I worked with dozens of mind control victims that came out, mind control victims of the Illuminati. Every one of them that I've worked with became a Christian when they were a small child. Their front personality, the personality that holds the body day in, day out, is a Christian. They got a lot of evil junk behind, but they got a nice front. See, you go to the scriptures say that Satan will masquerade as an angel of light. You go back into that Greek word there, masquerade, means to wear a mask. Whoever wrote that had a lot of insight as to how these people do things. They like masks. The better the mask, the better front, the more they want it. So what is the most popular occupation of these Illuminati kingpins? Those that saw my videotape will know so don't answer it. You know the answer already. I love to ask people, and they're telling me, oh, a politician, a lawyer, or this. No, Christian ministers. That's the best front. That's the best front. Give your people a good front. Lock the people into control. You can, if somebody's in Mormonism or in the Jehovah's Witnesses, you got them locked in place. Their life is spelled out. It's not a matter of doctrine. If you're in the Jehovah's Witnesses, you're kept so busy. You got these book meetings to go to. You've got your door-to-door field work to do. They keep you busy. Your life is structured. That's one of the things that we're facing is structure. We have a 9-to-5 job, and when you're done with the job, you're so exhausted working for a company that's probably owned, the stocks are probably owned or controlled, or the board of directors is Illuminati. You're exhausted, you come home and you flop down in front of a sitcom, and then you go through the same ritual again, They got you. And I'm going to I don't have a planned speech for you guys, so I can say whatever I want. That okay? Yes. Okay. With all due respects to Christ, and I'm a Christian, by the way, or I try to be a follower of Christ, so I'm not trying to knock people that believe the teachings of Christ at all, but I want to be historically accurate with you, okay? Because most Christians are often la-la land. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. When the white men came to the New World, if you go back and look at the charters that they wrote for the kings and kings wrote for the explorers, in the first few years they put as their primary objective the conversion of the heathens. Okay, they wanted to take these wretched pagans, and I know a lot of these homespun, shamanistic religions were kind of brutal. I mean, the Aztecs, I'm glad the Aztec religion is gone, really, personally. They butchered a lot of people, human sacrifices, So the Catholic Church, the Catholic explorers came in to bring them the light of Christendom. And they were really excited. Now think about this. Put yourself back in their shoes at that point in time. They're technologically far superior to the Native American Indians. Their technology, really, our technology today and their technology is quite comparable. If you look at the running gear of a buggy and you look at the running gear of a car, it's almost the same thing. So you see, there were a lot of they had a lot of technology back then. They had clocks, A watch that I'm wearing here is not that much more sophisticated than the clocks back then. Okay, they were technologically superior people. They thought that their religion was technologically superior. They had military superiority. So that for the first 100 years, they have all of these grandiose ideas. We're going to go in and we're going to convert the Indians. They're going to be so glad that we arrived on their shore. We're bringing a superior technology, a superior religion, everything. What happened? Well, they don't talk too much about that. What happened? I'll tell you what happened. The white men came over, the Indians didn't convert. The Indians looked at these people and they're going, they're slaves. We're free. I get up in the morning when I want to. I go out and fish. Now in England, the only people that were allowed to hunt and fish were the aristocrats. Okay, the Indian lived the life of a king. He got up when he wanted to. He went out, he fished, he hunted. He lived as he wanted to. He wore soft moccasins. The white man, he came in these heavy shoes with these big heels that were tight and hurt, and these tight-fitting clothes. I mean, you look at the women in the 19th century, they had to go into these whalebone things that you about passed out. Some of them did pass out when they got into them. And all of the structure. European society was broken into structure. You had this job, this job, this job. You didn't know what your neighbor was like because he was a doctor and you were a blacksmith. You couldn't communicate. That's where we are today, We're in the structured society. The Indians, everybody was equal. They all knew each other. They were all pals. I mean, there wasn't any, They looked over there at the white men. They didn't want that. There were a few, historically speaking, there was maybe a half a dozen Indians, that decided, well, they give this white man's religion a try. They converted to Christianity. Unfortunately, almost every last Indian that became a Christian after they were lived in white man society for a while ran back and became an Indian. On the other hand, tens of thousands of whites who had been under serfdom and under structured society in Europe, they got to the New World. Hey, man, let's go live like the Indians. They joined the Indian tribes. The Indian tribes were always bringing in new people. And the Indians, because they were fighting the white men, they had an attrition on their tribes. they had this custom that, like, if my grandfather died, I would grab somebody else and he would become my surrogate grandfather. And I'd give him the name, I'd treat him just the same. So when the Indians would capture white women, they would have the white women become surrogates within their tribe. Now it's kind of interesting. The white militias would go out to capture to rescue these white women. When they would find these white women, if the women had been only a couple weeks with the Indians, 2 weeks, maybe a month, amazingly, they wouldn't want to go back. They wanted to stay with the Indians. So you got a structured society. What does structured society do? It means nobody's responsible for anything. Ever go before a judge? The judge says, well, I didn't do this because it was recommended by Child Services. Child Services say, well, I didn't do it because the judge, he's the one who said, everybody's not responsible. I didn't build the bomb. Well, I didn't give the order to drop the bomb. Well, all I did was fly the plane. I didn't drop the bomb. No responsibility, right? And again, when we get back with a group dynamics, everybody seems to go back in and become an infant when you got a group, a bunch of teenagers. They're acting like teenagers, like little kids. Get a group of adults, men, instead of acting like men, they act like boys, Well, the irresponsibility that this structured society gives us. Think of it. Think of it in your own life. How we can hide so much behind a structured society. Oh, thinking of structured society, going back to Victorian times. There was more prostitution going on during the Victorian era than in the previous eras. We got these concepts that were spoon-fed by these establishment historians. And, the Victorian elite, the man and the wife slept in separate beds. You know why? It wasn't because you couldn't talk about sexual things openly. But these Illuminati kingpins, why did they sleep in separate beds? Because they were always slipping in all of these concubines and prostitutes and other people on the sly. Of course they didn't want to sleep with their wife. Nothing is as it seems. This is one of the first big lessons that we need to draw in dealing with our world, our reality, is nothing is as it seems, and it's because as I started doing all of these thousands of hours of research on the Illuminati, debriefing people that had been in the Illuminati, the thing that I was astonished by was I had no concept of this before, how they have over the centuries taken deception to a fine art that was beyond my dreams of anybody doing. Deception, duplicity, having a good front. Maybe I should talk specifically about some of these families real quickly. I'm going to show you some overheads. I'll move this here, and if I can get a couple volunteers, maybe we'll move that and we'll throw a few overheads up there on the wall. We're a very visual people because we experience television. So I was told by one friend, he said, well, you got to show them pictures. Well, I really want to touch your heart more than your eyes. But I'll give you something. I'll give you something. This book's interesting. I brought it along since I'm talking about the bloodline. Does it pertain to what I've just got through saying? I'll let one question slip in, but it's Remember my friend Dale? I never finished telling you what happened to Dale. He was so blown away that day that he gave up his plans to build his cabin, and he came back a total blah, blah, blah. For the next year, he was just a total basket case. It totally blew him away. He had no comprehension that these people, but just because they have that much power, I mean in what's called intelligence power, to be able to monitor us, Big Brother, doesn't mean that they use it. In World War II, the British had broken the German Enigma code. The Germans thought that their most secret codes, which were put out by the Enigma machine, were totally secret. During the entire war, the British knew everything that the Germans were, but I put it down on my list of things that the Illuminati planned to do. Well, what happened? A federal building was targeted, wasn't it? And somebody who's a therapist that works with, has some Illuminati mind control victims that she works with in Phoenix, one of her, the people that she gives therapy to told her that the Phoenix building, federal building, was targeted. And so this therapist, I know, called up the FBI, and once it was out in the open, they couldn't do it. But people in the Illuminati covens before the Oklahoma City federal building blew up, they were told in their coven meetings in the Midwest, bragging, you know, look what we're going to do. Okay, they were told ahead of time. Now, one reason why they blew up that building in Oklahoma City, and there were a whole bunch of reasons why it was a nice target, was there was a CIA man, career CIA man, and he retired, and he knew he was close to death, and he thought that this whole thing with the mind control stunk. And I have a friend who works giving therapy to mind control victims, and he was going to give several $1 million to my friend to set up a deprogramming center. Okay, that was in his will. My friend, in turn, had called me and said, well, I'll give you $1 million or $2 million. So you can set up a deprogramming center. You know, I have to admit, I was salivating. You know, I've been nickel-dime fighting these people. I'm going to have maybe $2, $3 million, who knows? Something I can really sink my teeth into to do something with. The CIA man died. His only will was in what building? That Oklahoma City federal building. So I was upset when it went up. This whole thing is orchestrated. The news media could have done whatever they're doing with Clinton. They could have done it 5 years ago. You know, they could do a lot worse to him, or they could do a lot less to him if they wanted to right now. They basically, if you look at it, if you analytically think, what is going on here? Look how it is so well orchestrated that they're dribbling out every day. They got a little bit, you know, it's like they're reeling you in on the fishing line, you know. It's orchestrated. And I'm not saying anything pro or con about Bill Clinton. You know, I don't care for the man. But this whole thing on television is just acting. You know, it's just acting. And of course, as I'll show you, we got governments within governments, boxes within boxes within boxes. You know, Clinton's not even the final decision maker on a lot of things, but he is Illuminati, and he's from several. He's got several bloodlines in him. And in fact, the man who's the head in England of heraldry, and he's also very important in genealogy, and I can't remember offhand what his actual job title is, but he's the authority. He's gone in and looked at Bill Clinton's lineage, and Bill Clinton's got a lot of royal blood in him. This is a very interesting book because this is on the Princess of Wales, and it gives her all the people that she's related to. And this is a gold mine to find this. She's related to the Astors. Now, let me tell you the names of the top 13 Illuminati bloodlines. Astor, Bundy, Collins, DuPont, Freeman, Lee, Kennedy, Onassis, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Russell, and the Merovingians, which the British royalty is part of the Merovingians. That's a 13th bloodline, as it's called, and the Van Dyne family. Well, Princess Di is related to the Astors, the Bundys, the Collins, the DuPonts, Freemans, Rockefellers. Yeah, she's related to J.D. Rockefeller. And yet they say, that Prince Charles married a commoner, and she's got more Illuminati blood practically than he does. I'm going to show these things real quickly for you. Of course, this will probably give you something to ask questions about. See if we've got... Okay. Where's our focus? Here we go. There we go. Okay. I may have to rotate. Oh, okay. Yeah, just the front, or lift it up with a book or something. I included the Reynolds family, and there's another family that's really powerful, the Krupp family. Krupps. In German, it's pronounced K-R-U-P-P. Yeah. There isn't a day go by that you don't use something by the DuPonts. Hey, anything that's got Teflon in it, DuPont's the only person that they hold the patent for Teflon. There are a lot of chemicals, paints. You'd be amazed at all of the things in our day-to-day life that DuPont has the patent on. Okay. Illuminati have their own structure. Each of the different families or bloodlines has their own royalty. Let's say I'm a Rothschild living in this area. There'll be a king for the Rothschilds in this area, and princes and everything. They rule. They got their own internal. Let's see if we can make that a little bit more. Let's come around this way again. Focused for you. Okay. I know I'm going to be going real fast here, but originally when they set up, they restructured the mystery religions. They got a guy whose pseudonym was Adam Weishaupt, which Adam means first man, Weishaupt means whitehead in German. That's a pseudonym. And he restructured the Illuminati into 13 degrees. They found that was real cumbersome, so they went to a six-tiered structure. These are lifetime positions, but it's... You can't hear me back there? Well, my voice will have the endurance to shout. That Cisco was a grandmother. You know, you've heard about a bride of Christ. Well, of course, the Satanists like to have the reverse of everything. There's a bride of Satan. You know, your mothers of darkness here, that level, are a bride of Satan, and will rule with him if they manage to bring in their Antichrist, which they got these grandiose plans to do. And who knows, maybe they'll do it. Hillary Clinton is a grand dame up here at this level, and Clinton is one lower. He's 5th degree on the restructuring. But anyway, there's a lot to this, and I don't want to take a whole lot of time explaining this chart, but I'm just giving you an idea, basically the concept that these people have their own hierarchical structures, and they've got different orders within their hierarchical structures. And a lot of people think that the idea of satanic ritual abuse is an urban myth. This is right out of a French museum. This is an actual document that was written in blood. It's an oath to Satan. This is the type of stuff that's standard operating procedure within the Illuminati. Write out a blood oath. This is an Illuminati kingpin, Guy de Rothschild. And from the information I have, which I believe is accurate, he's in the lineage of the Antichrist. All of these people are, the pictures I'm showing you in these on the next few overheads are all members of the Illuminati. These are your Astors. Cliveden Estate down here, for those of you that get into studying conspiracies, you've probably heard of the Council of Foreign Relations, and you've probably heard of the round tables, and there's the Royal Institute of International Affairs in Britain. Well, the American equivalent to the RIIA, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, is the Council of Foreign Relations. And tied up to some degree with this family, the Rhodes Scholars met a lot at the Cliveden Estate. That ties in too. By the way, Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar for a while. Rhodes Scholar? Cliveden? Yeah. These are some representatives of the DuPont Illuminati. You can see a couple of their estates. I guess I'd call them castles. Yeah. And Gaylord Freeman, he was the head of the Priory of Zion. For anybody who's read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that's him, the head of the Priory. And he was an advisor to presidents. Roger A. Freeman was also advisor to presidents. There was one of the Freemans is in this skull and bones picture here, class picture. But you know, a man who's giving the advice, or they call him an advisor, the man who tells the president what to do is certainly more powerful than the president. Kennedy's and JFK's sister married into British royalty. There's JFK at the Great Pyramid. People love to go on pilgrimages to the pyramid. A lot of them have gone. Rockefellers. This is Winthrop Rockefeller, who's reported to have the largest porn collection in the world. And he's also, according to rumor, Bill Clinton's secret father. This is Guy de Rothschild and his son. Again, this is one of their places in England. They've got castles all over the world, you know. You know. Onassis with John Paul Getty, the Lee family out of China. There's David Rockefeller with Li Qiang. In China, you take the surname and put it up front. So like my name is Fritz Springmeier. In China, I'd be Springmeier Fritz. You know, so the Li family, when you see the Asian, the way they write it out of their Asian names, you'll see the Li first. That might throw you if you're a researcher unless somebody tells you that. Those little glitches that people don't tell you that can kind of throw you. Here's Hitler's grandmother, she was impregnated by the Rothschilds. Hitler was a Rothschild. Then his father was paid to change his name. Big bucks to change his name. So they hid the Rothschild lineage. Remember I told you the Rothschilds were helping the Nazis during World War II. You know, there's some really interesting stories that, you know, come out of this thing. The head of the Gestapo, you know what the Gestapo was. He drove this Jewish couple to the border and made sure that they got to Switzerland. The point I'm trying to get across to you is we commoners, you know, we go to the Gulf, we fight, we get the Gulf War syndrome, or we go to Vietnam, and these people get rich, you know. The wars aren't anything like what they make it out to be. The Vietnam War, why was the Vietnam War meant to be won? The Vietnam War was meant to be dragged on as long as they could. If you look at the Delta, the Hanoi, Haiphong Delta area, the river, as it comes down, is bringing, just like all deltas, it's bringing silt. And it silts up very quickly. So they have the world's largest dredge in that delta so that they can bring ships in. Now, during the Vietnam War, the Russians and the Chinese were sending massive amounts of ships with massive amounts of war weaponry to North Vietnam. Without that infusion of sophisticated anti-aircraft rockets and all the rest of the stuff, mines and AK-47s and all the rest, the war would have stopped. They had to come into that harbor. They had to keep that harbor dredged. There was only one dredge that it was the world's largest that operated there. All that they had to do to stop the war was blow that dredge up. In Vietnam, there were some people that realized it. That's all that they had to do. They could have done that back in 1964, saved a number of tens of thousands of American lives. Just blow up the dredge. So there's these guys that realize this. So they start putting up these posters all around army posts, offering a reward for anybody who'll who go by and nobody takes them up. Finally, a group of guys, the ex-military, they're civilians, they managed to sneak a plane. It was like a DC-3, I think, that they managed to sneak into Thailand, and they managed to sneak through the radar and everything and bombed the Hanoi area and bombed the dredge. And wouldn't you know, after all of this time that the Americans and the Vietnamese have been fighting over the size of the table, within a matter of days, the Vietnamese decided to come to them and draw up a peace treaty. Somebody had the audacity to actually target the dredge. What was the Vietnam War all about? Well, if you look at the way they structured it, you went over. They didn't send over a unit en masse, and when that division had fought for a while, pull out the division. They rotated the guys in. So you had a year tour. They were rotating millions of Americans into this war. The war was structured to get as many people in to Vietnam as possible. And what did they want to do when they got the men over in Vietnam? They needed a war that was going to take place close to large drug supplies, because they were trying to create a drug culture over here. Why did they want a drug culture? A number of reasons. People are easier to control when they're addicted. The Illuminati makes big bucks because they're the ones that are really the major drug dealers, you know. So her father, who is a grand master in the Illuminati, he's sitting over here on the West Coast dealing drugs that are being brought in from Vietnam, Laos, China, right? And how are they brought? Well, see, yeah, body bags, good. Her father's uncle was the head of the entire military. How many people here have ever heard of General Earl Grant Wheeler? You've heard of McNamara, yeah, he heard back there. McNamara, who was also a Satanist, got a lot of press, but her great uncle sat behind the scenes and he was the chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's Illuminati. He's coordinating with her father running drugs. They're creating a drug culture over here. So that was the real meaning of the war. Here's Bill Clinton. I think some of you have already familiar with that this, you've seen Anton LaVey do his sign of Satan, but it's also used, this was in his inaugural speech, he was doing the sign of Satan with the left hand. But this is powerful because if you're under Illuminati mind control, it puts the altar that's seeing it into deeper trance. It's used for mind control. Anyway, I don't know if you'll be able to see this very well, but there's Cisco's great uncle, Chief of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Earl Grant Wheeler, and he was of the Collins bloodline, of the Collins family, and he was a descendant of Hiram Ulysses Grant. Now, what's very interesting is when you look at the nose and the facial features, and I mean, he doesn't have a beard, but when I took the two photographs side by side, I go, whoa, they got the same frown, they got the same nose. I mean, they looked a lot. The pictures didn't come out very good, but the two looked very similar. I was surprised by the family resemblance. Grant, he entered the private in April of 1861, and by early 1864, he had gone from private to the commander of the entire Union Army. See, you and I, if we entered as a private, in 3 years we wouldn't be commander of the entire Union Army. The town that General Grant came from is like 1,000 people. They had all kinds of senators. They had like 40 generals come out of that little village. I mean, of course, Illuminati people live in there, In my videotape, that I have back there, which is a 2.5-hour talk that I gave when I went out to major U.S. cities, and it was professionally done in a television studio, so it's really good. I go into how the Civil War was created. And it'll just blow your minds when you start seeing the connections between all of these people. They're related. It's one big happy family at the top. And what they like to do is they create banner issues that everybody believes in. Slavery. Of course, most people in the United States detested it. They didn't care for slavery. So you had a small group of people called abolitionists that even wanted to get radical and abolish it. It was something that stirred people up. And then you have other people in the South. This is their property. This is their livelihood. They don't want to lose slavery. It's like the abortion issue. It gets people excited, right? I mean, you don't get people to go to war over which brand of laundry detergent you're going to use. You get people to go to war over issues like slavery. How did they manipulate behind the scenes to get this country into a war? What was their ulterior motive behind causing that war? See, there are many different levels of which you can look at the Civil War and why it was fought. It was fought for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. But if you look at from the Illuminati standpoint, the war was created because they wanted to split the United States. And Abraham Lincoln, by the power of his personality, they didn't realize he had the character and the personality to come through and defy them. He defied them and kept the United States intact. If it hadn't been for the personality, and again, it's like with Clinton. I'm not giving, I can't give a stamp of approval to everything that Clinton did. I can't give a stamp of approval to everything Lincoln did. Because there were 4 men when I was a teenager that I decided to emulate. I said, I've got to find somebody who's a good example and try to copy that so I turn out halfway decent. And the four people I decided to study their lives and to emulate was Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, Benjamin Franklin, and Jesus Christ. Well, as I researched these people, Benjamin Franklin turned out to be a very high-ranking Freemason and a Satanist. Not that he didn't have a lot of good qualities to him, but he also had a rough side to him. Mahatma Gandhi, he had some rough sides to him too. He had a lot of positive things. Don't get me wrong. Nobody's black or white. We're looking at people are a mixture. But there were things that Mahatma Gandhi did, like he wanted to prove that he was virtuous, so he slept next to naked girls. He had his rough side too, and he belonged to the Theosophical Society, which is the same society that Adolf Hitler belonged to. Let's see, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln turned out, in investigating him, there was a triad that controlled the Rosicrucians, and he was the head of the Rosicrucians in the United States. So when he talked to, I know he used terms like God and everything, and there's a lot of positive things about Lincoln, but if you've ever listened to Rosicrucians, like in Quakertown, Pennsylvania, they used Abraham Lincoln had, like so many of these Illuminati, he had sexual liaisons with people that he wasn't married to, and he had daughters by King Leopold's daughter, who was royalty, so he had a relationship with with Belgium royalty and had children. That's the way the real world is. The only person that I came out really, totally fixated on and just find incredible, I still find the man incredible, was Jesus Christ. I've never met anybody in my whole life that spoke or did the things that he did. Leroy Springs, a Rothschild, he worked for the Payziers. I won't get into it. This all ties in with how this country was run. Payziers were part of the Merovingian dynasty, very powerful. You probably heard of the Federal Reserve, and you know that they created the Federal Reserve at Jekyll Island, right? Well, Morgan owned the Jekyll Island Hunting Club, but who owned the island? The Payziers. See, P-A-Y-S-E-U-R. And see, the Springs were Rothschilds, and Abraham Lincoln's mother was impregnated by the Springs, which were Rothschilds. Abraham Lincoln was secretly a Rothschild, but that's, anyway. But, oh yeah, they secretly marry. They're always doing these secret games. It's hard to track these bloodlines because most of the people that belong to these bloodlines do not have last names like the 13 names that I gave you. Most Rothschilds do not have the name Rothschild. Just like her last name was not Collins, but she was of the Collins family. In fact, this is her. Hi, Cisco. This is her. These are some of her different personalities. Can you see the difference? Can you see if you look, if you know? I'm telling you this because maybe, once you start understanding the subtle clues of multiple personality disorder, maybe you'll start noticing some of the people around you have this. A standard programming feature. And I told you that some of her parts were dehumanized to think they were cats. So that's a picture of how they would view themselves. I'm sorry if I'm in some people's way. Here's a couple more people that were programmed with the total mind control. Marilyn Monroe, who is a sexual slave. James Mansfield, who is high priest in the Church of Satan. Sammy Davis Jr. was too. He was a slave for the late Anton LaVey, who is no longer alive, no longer with us. I'm just running through this real quickly, just to give you a tidbit. You know, I'm kind of titillating your minds here. I'm really trying to reach your heart, but I'm going to give you a little bit to interest your minds. This is showing when different personalities take control of a person's body. They would take PET scans of their brain, and it would show that when different personalities take the body, they're a totally different person. That's what these is showing. These actually are colored in color, and that didn't come out at all very good. Illuminati, these bloodlines, they had the formulas on how they control the world. There's 6 different areas that the world's control is broken into, and then they control each one of these areas. So, for instance, they control the church, they control the courts, our values, they control the markets, they control prices and the state. And, you know, this is such a vast subject, but I'm just trying to, you know, give you a little bit of an idea of how this all works. They set up objectives, and then they break up an objective into different, okay, we want to get this objective, then we've got to do all these things to get this objective accomplished. But to get A done, then they have to parcel out that part of it. They have to parcel it out to a whole bunch of different organizations quietly. Okay? And it all happens behind the scenes, and the only way you see that anything's happening is if you put the whole puzzle together. And then, you know, which is frightening. Nobody wants to do that, you know. Here's another example of, you know, objective. Abolish family life and marriage. You know, so you abolish family life and marriage by doing these different things, and to accomplish these different things, then you have different groups play their little role so it all comes together, and nobody even sees a pattern. But strangely enough, society has moved in the direction that they want it to move. Another one, you know, destroy all authority. Are we losing respect for our government? Yeah. Right. This is a basic U.S. policy process. It could be talked about for maybe a day. It's very important. You've got your key decision makers on a worldwide level. They pass decisions down to the national level. There's a group called Majesty 12, MJ12. It's got a whole bunch of other names to it. The study group, 5412 committee. Each administration, they change the name of it. Is MJ12 just somebody's fictional idea? It's kind of interesting. I have some Christian brothers, and they're these guys that like to be intuitive, that like to, I guess you could call it psychic, you know. They like to have the Spirit of God tell them things. Okay, but they read my 3D research too. So they're busy talking about MJ12 because I'd come out with this article a number of years ago about MJ12. They're talking about it in a latrine. There's a guy in there that's a CIA agent, and he goes bonkers. He goes, how do you guys know this stuff? This is supposed to be secret, you know. So then what was really funny is they go, well, God showed us this, this, and this about you. And then that really blew the guy's mind because, you know, how do these people know about his personal life? So he had to invite them over to his house. But his reaction to the name MJ12, I mean, it was like, you know, a real dead giveaway. This is not science fiction, you know. It's not something from Hollywood. There is a group. It's a study group. Underneath the study group are your policy planning groups. Because there's so many decisions that need to be made in this country that they can't all be made by a group of 13 men, you know. Actually, the study group increased its size to 40, but even 40 men can't make all the decisions. So you've got policy planning groups. I give you a list over here of your policy planning groups. Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Brookings Institute, the Business Roundtable, the American Enterprise Institute, Population Control, Resources for the Future Urban Institute. These are your level 2 policy planning groups. They can't make all the decisions. They have to pass some of the decisions on down the line. So they send them on down the line to research policy planning groups, which are like the Rand Corporation, the Stanford Research Institute, and the Hudson Institute. There are people on the inside that don't like what's going on. There are people that are graduates from the Stanford Institute that are sick of what they're seeing their classmates doing, how they're leading us into a new world order. They're secretly trying to pull the pins out from underneath this thing. You know, there are people scattered around that are all doing their little work, you know, like moles for our side. There's people in the CIA that don't like the New World Order. They want it to fall apart. Oh, I brought along something here that was really cool. Well, I don't know if I should get into it, but maybe it can be encouraging. See, the CIA, well, actually, backtracking a little bit. You know, the National Security Agency, more secret than the CIA. National Security Agency has been in charge of all of the state-of-the-art computer research in this country since World War II. They first invent something, and then they allow somebody else 10 years down the line to pretend to discover it, okay? So when these American corporations that are controlled by Illuminati build these computers, American intelligence is thinking, okay, well, since we control computer technology, we'll slip in this hidden equipment in all of these American computers so that when they're sold to these European banks, like the Swiss banks, we can monitor all of the accounts secretly. So they got a back door into all of these secret Swiss bank accounts. Well, there's some good guy CIA people that rogue intelligence agencies from these different intelligence agencies that are sick of what's going on, and they got together and they got themselves a Cray computer that they put in the back of this semi-truck, and they're driving it around the country, and they're tapping back into the back door. So all of these criminals, these Illuminati criminals that are making big bucks off of drugs and porn and everything, they went in and they took their ill-gotten wealth out of their secret bank accounts and transferred it to another account. They walked up, I can't remember, what was it? It's approximately 50 congressmen that they did this to. And they walked up to these congressmen's desk with manila envelopes with all the proof of these people's criminal activities, laid it on the desk and said, you resign, you quit being a congressman, we've already transferred your money out of your Swiss account, you resign. I got a list in here. Man, do you remember this last year? There was a spat there where all these congressmen all of a sudden were quitting. That's why. I got the list of all the people that they laid manila envelopes down on their desk. Not one of them challenged. They all resigned, every one of them. So anyway, Anyway, there are people in their various locations trying to slow things down. People that work in E-Systems. E-Systems builds the electronics for the New World Order. Some of these people know how to shut down their satellites, their communication. They tell me, they try to bring in a New World Order, we're going to shut their communications down. I hope they do. Now, these Illuminati kingpins, they own the resources. They own banks, corporations, personal wealth, and with that wealth that they have, they give grants, or they control these researchers, the think tanks, the universities, the foundations. They put their wealth into the foundations, which then pay universities, which then, you know, the researchers, the scientists are prostitutes because they're doing what the foundation wants. Foundation's doing what this Illuminati kingpin wants. And they also control the opinion makers. And so let's say they want to get something done. The president or somebody big in Congress will say, we got a problem. We need to do a government study to figure out how to deal with this problem. Now, they already know what their answer is going to be. They dump millions of dollars into some government research. You know, for 10 years, they do all this government research. They come up with stacks of findings that even researchers like myself aren't going to wade through, and the conclusion's what they want. Then they go before Congress. Well, then they get their opinion makers, like their establishment media, to say, hey, these research institutes, think tanks have discovered this. This is the answer. We spent $5 million and this is the answer. This is the best solution. Then they go before Congress and they present this information, and, you know, they're working at all sides of it. So before long, we're asking them for what they want to do. They always get us to ask them for what they want to do, right? Think about it. They want to, you know, you think people aren't going to take implants? They just put in an ad in New York City for $25. We'll give you $25 if you bring your child in and have them implanted. The mothers lined up in the streets and were fighting in line to put implants into their children. People aren't going, you know, unless people are informed like you, you're going to ask them for what they want. So when you start seeing the establishment move one way, you know, it's kind of, I like to head the other way. You know, it's almost, I don't want to be too much of a knee-jerk reaction there, but I generally figure, you know, why are they trying to tug me that way? You know, what's behind all of this? Anyway, this could be talked on for who knows how long. If you want a source of their, if you want a book that gives you an opening into how the leaders think, read Machiavelli's The Prince. It's very easy to get. When I went to West Point, they taught me this stuff. I thought to myself, why are they teaching me this? Why are they teaching me? I mean, what's this got to do with being a second lieutenant? Here's samples of Machiavellian's advice. This is advice to a ruler on how to rule. Rulers should be above the laws of the land and not follow the same moral code that governs the conduct of private individuals. Rulers should defend less powerful neighbor countries and weaken the stronger neighbor countries by setting up protectorates and weakening the strong. A successful divide and conquer strategy is achieved. This is what the British Empire did. This is what they do with us. Divide and conquer us. See, this is why they take the banner issues, people. Christians, no Christian is going to oppose a move of the Holy Spirit. So we make a move of the Holy Spirit, and behind that move of the Holy Spirit, that charismatic movement, we can do whatever we want. What Christian is going to argue against keeping promises? Promise keepers. So behind promise keepers, we can do whatever we want. Survival. We want to survive. If we think we're being threatened, the Japanese bomb us, hey, you know, really what happened? How many people know what really happened? Why did Japan bomb Pearl Harbor? Has anybody ever stopped to, I mean, it amazes me, and I'm not picking you out, but in the general run-of-the-mill American, I mean, if we went out there on the street and we said, why did the United States go to war? They'd say, because the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Then go one step further and ask, well, why did they bomb Pearl Harbor? I don't know. Well, they don't know. Well, why did the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor? They really did it, but I'll tell you the background behind it. One is, in 1920, and I photocopied off some of the book, they wrote out a book that the Japanese got that gave the entire strategy that the Japanese used in the Pacific War. So we gave them the strategy to use. Then we brought their officers over, their naval men, and even some of their intelligence. We gave them a grand tour of Pearl Harbor and showed them how Pearl Harbor could be attacked. Okay. Then we turned a total deaf ear. We had intelligence agents in Japan. They were watching the Japanese fleet do maneuvers. They knew the Japanese. We intercepted their codes. We knew what they were going to do. Roosevelt knew that they were going to attack Pearl Harbor. So what did he do? He made sure that the American planes were parked on the runway so that they couldn't take off easily. They took all of the valuable ships, were the aircraft carriers, and moved them out at Pearl Harbor a few days before and left the battleships that they didn't mind blowing up. They had a lot of people in. There were a lot of people that knew that we knew that we knew that the Japanese were going to attack. But they had to get us into war. So they intentionally did things to provoke the Japanese. You have to think about Japan. Take a trip to Japan. There are no natural resources in Japan. They don't produce oil in Japan. If you're going to be a modern industrial nation, you have to have oil. Well, how did we squawk and whine when the Arabs did their embargo back in the 70s? You know, we were ready to go to war, right? What do you think the Japanese felt like when we blocked them getting access to oil in Asia? They had no other recourse. We were going to shut their factories down. Japan is not a country of natural resources like it's not a breadbasket like Kansas, you know, where you have these big farms. They have factories that are dependent upon importing goods in, turning whatever it is that they're doing in the factories and shipping it out. That's the type of, even back then, we forced them into war. But the American people weren't told that. All we're told is those nasty Japanese surprise attacked us. Of course, Roosevelt had to make sure that it was a surprise. Okay, so he wanted us to get into war. I could go into it. It's a lot more involved in that. But anyway, we got to quit trusting these people. They've got a mask. Oh, this is on the inside of the Illuminati. They divide up the area into occult boards. Then the members of these occult boards meet and take care of business in their area. This is Illuminati control over foods and grains, how it breaks down. Yes, people, PL 94490 in 1975. You know, people talk about weather modification. If you listen to the establishment news, they say, oh, those conspiracy theorists, they believe in weather modification. There's a government agency that was created by that public law that since 1975 has been carrying out weather modification at your tax dollars. That's not some lunatic conspiracy theorist. It's public law, people. What are they doing? How are they modifying our weather? With genocidal policies in mind. But that's another long story, worthy of several books. For us, a common person, what are our options? We can say, well, there's no God or there's a God. If we say that there's no God, then we've placed ourselves into this kind of a situation. If we say that there is deity or gods, then say there's one God or many gods. If we say that there's one God, we can say that that one God's identified with the universe or distinct from the universe. If we say that God's distinct from the universe, we can make the choice, well, is he finite or is he infinite? If we decide that he's infinite, we can say he never does miracles or sometimes does miracles. If we say he sometimes does miracles, we come down here to what's the traditional standard monotheistic religions, Judaism, that is, not Kabbalistic Judaism, but Judaism that's based upon the Old Testament, Christianity, Islam. Okay, I threw this up here because God has given us the freedom each to seek Him, to seek truth. And you are a free agent in God's eyes. He has given you the moral responsibility to make the right choices in your life and to seek Him and to love Him and find truth. Okay? The Illuminati doesn't care where on that spectrum you fall. They don't care. They have set up institutions to control you. And that's where, it's time now for questions and answers. I just got that message, so we're going to go to the question and answers. But one of the things that I've been doing for the past 6 years at least is trying to help people understand how they go in and structure these religious groups, how these religious groups all collaborate together at the top because they're all controlled by the Illuminati. And so, we need to catch on to their game, and we need to become free moral agents taking responsibility for our own lives. Don't turn your life over to somebody else. It's your responsibility. Okay, now we're going to question and answers. I got through some of those. I'm glad I got through some of them. Yes.
Billy Graham was always a very strong force for otherwise very wise old black women. Why is that?
The people that control us are very skilled at saying and doing the things that we want to hear. They know how to control us, and they know what to do. And that's why I look at myself up here. I'm not an eloquent speaker. I don't have anybody behind me practically, And I look at how I can compete with people like this. Like when Billy Graham came to Portland, Oregon, all of the churches in southern Washington and northern Oregon supported him. He got millions of dollars for his ministry. Boy, I would have liked to have just had a tiny drop of the amount that he got. But what were they using his ministry for? Cisco was in the Illuminati. She can tell you firsthand. She participated in some of the... They used it for drug laundering, money laundering behind his crusades, and a lot of other stuff. They know how to create a good front. People that listen to Billy Graham, some of them become genuine Christians, and he does some good, but there's a lot more involved. And that's why I got, in the Volume 2 book, I've got 30 to 40 pages of an expose on Billy Graham like you've never seen before. Oh. Well, the sad fact about... Okay. Well, it is on. I'm not getting any. Am I getting some? Okay. All right. The question that was asked is what is the connection between Billy Graham and Haiti? Like I say, some of these things emotionally hurt me really deeply. And one of the things that emotionally hurts me very deeply is that Haiti was selected as one of the first countries that they were going to try to bring under this total mind control. Haiti has been subjected to horrendous mind control. Billy Graham is part of their mind control. He's a programmed multiple personality. So that's why there's a connection there. This gentleman.
how old is the Illuminati, or how old is the exercise of power of the Illuminati?
Okay. The question, okay.
And that is, what's the time period of shade
Okay. Okay. The first question was, how old is the Illuminati in terms of exercising power? It goes back to the ancient mystery religions and Babylon, and it's been here continuously. The most significant origin that I've been able to find for the power structure goes back to Afghanistan, to the earliest periods of time back when they were, the Aryans were inventing war chariots, and back to an area, there's a city called Balkh, B-A-L-K-H, very significant, important city in terms of the origin of the power structure. Okay. It goes clear back to the earliest historical periods. To rephrase the answer in another way, go back in history and ask yourself, when did the elite turn over their power? They never did. They worked through a lot of proxies, but the powerful oligarchical families never turned over their power to the common person. They've given it different costume changes, but they've never relinquished their power. Okay, the next question is on Shays' Rebellion. That was right after the American Revolution. Okay, next question.
Since you're talking about Graham, what I want to know things that affect the black community. What is your take on these things like the millionaire march? How does something like that, the money that you got from that, how does that affect you? Is that orchestrated?
That's one area that I haven't researched in, but so you probably know. Okay, the answer was, or the question was, how does the Million Man March fit in with all of this?
Basically, before you were saying like all of these charismatic leaders.
Oh, yes.
You have people like the ministers who have a lot of people around. Is
Right.
someone that has been selected?
Okay, the question is with the charismatic leader, that there's a lot of people around them and a lot of everything, is that somebody who's been selected? There's a lot of different levels of participation in things. Some people are unwitting participants because you come along with and are a natural shoe-in to an agenda that they want. Sometimes you are somebody that they can manipulate and control and blackmail. And see, understand that the banner issues that they pick out there for us to get behind are legitimate causes. The ecology, I mean, when I say legitimate, I mean there's excesses, you know. But who doesn't want the nature, and who doesn't want to preserve different animals? But they've got a hidden agenda behind it. I mean, you know, in California, there's now certain fleas that are on the endangered species list, and if you don't respect that flea on you can't use your property because you got that special kind of flea. And then, of course, it's totally bogus because it's not even a rare form of flea. But okay, going back to the Million Man March, I'm really red flags go up when I see somebody who has a lot of power and is able to wheel and deal. Because I know that if somebody has a lot of power, and the Illuminati doesn't like rivals, what is their options? Their options are to come in and blackmail the person. Okay. Unfortunately, they know how to do that. If they can't blackmail a person, then they have other options. When you become blackmailed, what does that mean? It doesn't mean you quit crusading for whatever that good cause was. It means you start doing things on the sly. Unfortunately, everything that's clean gets dirtied. I'm just telling you the principles. I can't speak the specifics in that thing. But my red flags go up when I see a lot of power and money and prestige behind certain things. And that doesn't mean that what they're advocating, I'm not for abortion. But on the other hand, I know that the anti-abortion movement is being used to work some agenda for them. If you go back and look at the temperance campaigns, because that's historical, it's easier for someone like me as a researcher to go back in and look at the temperance movement where they crusaded against alcohol and brought in prohibition. When you actually go in and look at the kingpins in that temperance movement, you'll find out that they go back to the secret societies. They were funded by the secret societies, and when prohibition came in, who made big bucks? People like P.J. Kennedy made big bucks bootlegging the liquor, and all the little people that had a still out in the back wound up in jail. Okay? So I'm real leery of something like that.
Yeah, this is found this brother's question about the black community. To say, my question is you were saying that organized religion was used as a means of mind control. Humanity is however actually means this new Antichrist bringing this new order.
Yeah, I showed you one. Okay, the question was, do I know some of the major characters that are involved in ushering in the Antichrist? Again, I could be mistaken. I mean, my resources or the information I get is not infallible. I'm not God, and so whatever I say, hold it with some reservation. I mean, it may turn out wrong. And another thing too is even when I got inside information on how they were going to do the elections, they changed their mind, and I got caught. I mean, I put out a newsletter, and I said they had selected Bush to beat Clinton. They had initially done that, then they changed their mind. During the campaign, you can look and see that at a certain point, Bush lost heart. He just started going through the motion. I realized that they'd changed their mind. So I wrote in my newsletter, they've changed their mind, they want Clinton in. But all these people that got my first newsletter, they went, some of them, not all of them, some of them didn't bother to read the next one. They're going like, oh well, there's Fritz, he's a false prophet. We need to stone him, So again, they can change their mind. But here are a few key characters. Al Gore. Al Gore was his mother didn't have him in a local hospital. She drove 30 or 40 miles so that he could be born in Alexandria, Virginia, because of the occult significance of Alexandria. Okay, so these people look back to Babylon and Egypt and everything. I am so glad that you're going back and you have your books on your roots back here. And, I advocate that. I'm not into metaphysics, okay? Don't get me wrong on that. But I do advocate that we know our roots. That is so important. That's what these people try to take away from us, is our identity. And I got onto that for some reason. It's because I got a book that's real rare. It's the Book of Beginnings, and it goes into how the British Isles, a long time ago, in the early foundations, came from Egypt. So it's a thick book, pretty rare. There's a lot of things. So much has happened in history, that when you go in and trace where different peoples and ideas and things come from, it's pretty involved. Another person, remember I showed you Baron Guy de Rothschild, or Guy de Rothschild? Okay, he had 4 daughters that he carried out incest with, and that's standard procedure. He's laughing. Well, for me, it's like this real trivial thing, because when you know what they really do to their own people, I mean, incest is mild. But anyway, in terms of the incest, let me just backtrack or interrupt my own thing here. The original Rothschild, and he took the name Rothschild because Rothschild in German means Rothschild, means red shield. It was the hexagram, the pentagram, the hexagram that was a magical symbol, and so he took that as his name. He was originally Bauer, but when he died, he had a will. If you wanted to be in on the inheritance as a Rothschild, and he had 5 sons legitimately, and he had 1 son secretly, illegitimately. So these 6 sons, he says, if you want to, inherit my big bucks and be part of the bloodline, you have to adhere to the conditions of this secret will, which today are still secret. But because I've worked with people that came out of the Rothschild bloodline, I know a little bit of the will, and one of the conditions of that will is that the fathers had to have incest with their children. Okay? So Guy de Rothschild had incest with his daughters. All of these daughters are secret daughters that are illegitimate. They like to have illegitimate children because then you're a bastard and they can humiliate you. It's part of the mind control. So they form a group that's called the Mary Group. What I'm telling you is top secret, this is top secret inside stuff. It's, I throw out these nuggets of gold, and, it's like, for some people, it's like handing them $1 million yen note, and they're going, pretty paper, and walk off and leave it. So anyway, there's a Mary Group, and they are, one of them's to have the Antichrist. And he will be labeled the son of Apollo. Go to Rockefeller Center, and what's the statue there? What's that Home Alone movie? They show him being lost in New York, and he looks up there at Christmas time. What is the statue? It's the statue of Apollo. You have the statue of Apollo there because the Antichrist will be the son of Apollo. Okay, let's see. What they've tried to do in the Illuminati is they've tried to take men that had the spirit of the Antichrist, and they've tried to get all these bloodlines knitted together like you would make a rope. And so they're pouring in all of this occult power and all this demonology and all of this powerful blood. Supposedly, they think their blood's powerful. Pouring this all in over the years, And they've been having children as fast as they can so that they can keep... See, what they're doing is they're having a child. When he gets 14, he secretly impregnates another woman so that they can pull as much together as they can this century. It's this mad race that they're trying to create their Superman. And then, anyway, did that kind of answer the question? The actual people, I gave the name Alexander Rothschild, I think was the name that's the primary candidate. And I don't think if he was assassinated that they would be in trouble. I mean, they'd stick number 2 in, next candidate in line. Yeah, there's a man that's primary candidate. I don't believe Juan Carlos is. I don't believe Prince Charles. Don't believe Lord Maitreya. Those are all powerful men that if you could follow them around 24 hours a day, I'm sure have contact with the inner group. And Prince Charles is a lot more behind that man than people begin to realize. Well, they're from the Merovingian dynasty, which is the 13th Illuminati bloodline. Let's see, who was next? Maybe this lady. Oh, okay. Big question. The lady here has asked about Disney. I wrote about 40 pages of expose about Disney in the Deeper Insights book. Oh boy. This is like opening a Pandora's box. Disneyland has secret underground tunnels under Disneyland and Disney World, okay? Those were used for many years for creating mind-controlled slaves. The movies that Disney puts out have mind-controlled commands and triggers in them, okay? So they look very benign, but they're just the opposite. Walt Disney, remember I told you that these people can have the best front possible? If you go in and read who Walt Disney really was, he's a sadistic son of a gun of the worst kind. And Walt Disney did not do any of that creative stuff. Walt Disney, if you go back in and look at when the first successful Walt Disney cartoon occurred, okay, in the late 20s, in 1927, they created the first successful Walt Disney cartoon. Walt Disney had quit cartooning prior to that. Walt Disney had other people do all of that work. But all of the credit for all those years, for all the work of thousands and thousands of creative people was all bestowed on Walt Disney. He was given all these awards by the Queen. He got, I mean, stacks and stacks of awards. He went before all kinds of people and got all kinds of statues and plaques and everything for his great creativity. Other people were doing the work. And he was a tyrant. He wasn't even a benevolent dictator. And in terms of the black race, the only people that were Afro-Americans working at Walt Disney was a shoeshine boy. Well, Walt Disney was in charge. But then, in terms of the Illuminati is very racist. Not that they don't mind controlling everybody, but you hear Illuminati, they tend to be Caucasian, okay? So the people that are bearing the brunt of their total mind control are their own people, So I guess that's kind of a blessing for the other races. No, the women are the spiritual leaders. Yes, ma'am.
As a group, I think black people had already figured out that they had no soul. But I would like to know what brought you to that position? And also, have you thought about trying to find out what goes on in Jackson Hole, Wyoming?
Okay. She asked two questions. One is how did I learn that they don't have any souls, and have I investigated Jackson Hole, Wyoming? Yes, I'll take the second one first. Yes, I have investigated Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's a watering hole for these Illuminati elite types. Rockefellers, have some ranches up there, and some of these other big wigs. They like to have some places where they can go and do their thing. As far as the soul, that's a pretty big issue, and I would say I can't even begin to touch that, but you could probably. Oh.
You got a theory about the cloning thing too.
Yeah. Well, when you get into cloning, which is a whole nother, oh boy.
They they have no soul. Is that effectively cloned?
Well, not everybody in the Illuminati is cloned. Not everybody in the Illuminati is a hybrid, but certainly those that are hybrids, excuse me, would not have the soul of a human. It's what the Bible called, the Beni Elohim, the sons of God, came down and mated with the women. That's what we got today. And the ancient wisdom of the Bible says, as in the days of Noah, so it will be in the end times. Well, in Noah's day, what was going on is you had Nephilim, call them what you want, demons, fallen angels, aliens, mating with the human race. The reason that there was a flood was to save the remnant of God's creation. If he hadn't stepped in, his creation would have been genetically altered. You wouldn't have had life as we know it. Everything we do, everything you do, everything I do can be broken down into two categories. We can give life, or we can give death. We can be in the kingdom of life, or we can be in the kingdom of death. Okay? And sometimes you have to do radical surgery to save life. Okay, this lady back here. Would I comment on the John Benet Ramsey murder? Just a nice cover-up where they took somebody that they sacrificed, and one of their little mind-controlled little girls, and everybody's covered it up, and you got some parents that are no good nicks. Let's see, who was first? Maybe, okay, this gentleman.
Two things. How is it that they would abuse their children if you're going to want to continue a successful dynasty? If you would, abuse Mr. Sally, saying that John D. Rockefeller abused Junior, or that Morgan did that to his children, how are they going to be able to run things if they've been originally abused?
This is where you have to understand the mind control. We've got 3 books back there that explain it. Yeah, it's very important. In fact, during the 30s, it publicly came out that if you were abusive to your child, that they would be smarter. So you had a lot of scientists that weren't connected with the occult or the Illuminati that heard this. They decided, well, hey, let's abuse our children. It'll make them smarter, make them more attentive. In order for them to maintain the power that they have, you go back in and look at these lineages. I mean, you'll see some of these Rothschilds, they're forced to marry their cousins. They fall in love with somebody, they don't get a choice. They got to marry their cousin, You look at, look at their lives and you'll see it's really sad, but they're trapped in a system. And there are ways to totally abuse somebody and still maintain control over them, and that's why I wrote the books on the trauma-based mind control.
Okay, so in a lot of ways, I would pretend they're not so different from everybody else in the sense that they are just slaves to the paradigm that they've been abused into, and they just keep continuing it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
My other question is, Madame Blavatsky, how's the involvement, how is she connected to the book?
Is who?
Madame Blavatsky, the theosophical. How does she get into it?
Well, Madame Blavatsky, as you know, came from Russia. She traveled around to places like Tibet. She was in Illuminati Lodge in Cairo. She was well connected with people in the Illuminati, which makes it obvious. If you look at the lodges and the people she is associated with, she was in the Illuminati. She's been very important person for a lot of people to read her books. And some people have said, that she wasn't original. She plagiarized a lot of information from other people. I guess that's what some people say. That's neither here nor there for me, but she sort of served as a public figure for the occult world, pulling together, putting out information that for the public. And see, we have to understand that what we're going through in the last couple of hundred years is what Alice Bailey called externalization of the hierarchy. All of these mysteries, these secrets that were done in the secret societies are now being externalized into society in general. So she was part of that process.
Okay, I just want to establish that she seems like she's very, and Alice Bailey too, very sincere about their whole program, and if it would oppose certain Illuminati plans, they would go against those plans because they would be their program, which dovetails with Illuminati in some ways, in other ways doesn't. So I think she's a sincere person in what she's doing.
I haven't seen any contrast between what she was proposing and Illuminati plans. Alice Bailey's plans are I don't see any difference between Alice Bailey and their plans. In fact, Alice Bailey described some things that shows me that she was an insider. Anyway, that's my take on it. Sir?
Can you tell us what are some things you're doing to control black people?
To control the black people? What are some of the things being done to control the black people? Drugs is a big one. Another thing that's being done, and this incenses me. You have your privatization of your prisons, and we are headed back into secret slavery. They're using, and Afro-Americans are the predominant ones that are being used in these factories that are quietly, when they privatize the prison industry, these prisons are providing prison labor at no charge for these factories. And so by creating situations for the Afro-Americans where they end up being incarcerated, right? And they know how to create the social situations to get people incarcerated. Once you're incarcerated and into the system, you belong to them, you know, and then they do what they want. There's also the trauma-based total mind control going on. You're not going to want to hear this. You know, I don't say what I say with any axe to grind, or you know. So if I'm not politically correct, or if I'm not saying what's popular, you know, that's, I guess, everybody's tough luck. That's just the way the chips fall. I just report what I see. But O.J. Simpson's mother, where did she work? She worked in the mental hospital. How do you think O.J. Simpson is so disassociated from all the pain he has to endure from being, you know, a football player? He's under the type of mind control that doesn't mean that he's not a good person. Don't misunderstand me. But you have to understand how they create disassociated states, how they use hypnosis, how they do the programming, you know. So they're coming into the black community and carrying out mind control. That's of the horrendous kind that my books have exposed, the trauma-based total mind control. And think of it. Go back, and I haven't seen all of Roots, but when he was trying to tell him, your name is Toby, right? And he takes the whip and he whips him. That's just a technologically simple form of trauma-based mind control, you know. We're now more technologically advanced. In the Volume 2 book, is the patent. You can read it. Anybody can build it, I guess, if you want to. It is the patent for a machine that will throw thoughts directly into a person's mind. So, you know, the whole patent, I photocopied the whole patent there. So they're using that. I mean, you know, I pick up this hitchhiker, and he's saying, and I never met the guy before, and he's saying, they're after me. They're trying to make me into a drug dealer. And he caught on that they were doing mind control, so he's trying to stay one step ahead of them so he doesn't turn into a drug dealer. Another thing is they have formulas where they know how to keep you just underneath the thumb economically. I mean, you just never quite make it, you know. Okay, and another thing, too, and this is going to step on a lot of people's toes, too, but it's just the plain truth, okay, or whatever. If you go and you look at the Quran, if you go and look at the Old and the New Testament, and it's been suppressed, but the New Testament condemns interest-taking of all types, just like the Old Testament. Our society is based on interest-taking. We will never be free as long as our whole society and culture is based on us going and borrowing from there. Because like the Bible says, when you borrow from somebody, you become their slave.